In today's tutorial, we'll loom knit the Trinity Stitch, which is also called the raspberry or blackberry stitch. Welcome back to another Yarnspirations tutorial. I'm your host, Kristen of GoodKnitKisses. Let's get started. In today's tutorial, you'll need a medium number 4 weight yarn in Caron 1 Pound color Sunflower. Today we're working the Pebble Pop Knit Pillow pattern, and this is made for knitting needles, and you can see that it has a little bit of a see-through stitch. It's got this really cool bumpy texture and everything. It's called the Trinity Stitch or the Blackberry or the Raspberry Stitch, and we've converted it onto the loom for you. We're going to work through how to make this on the knitting loom. I found that working with this loom here is going to get me enough stitches for this pattern, and we use a worsted weight yarn. The loom is a 3/8 or small gauge loom, so you want to, if you want to scale it up, you can use an appropriate weight yarn for that particular loom, but to get this look here, you're going to want to use these. All right, let's get started. The Trinity Stitch is a 4+2 pattern with a 4-row repeat, so if you can just remember the 4 and 4. You can work it on a multiple of 4 stitches, and then you're going to need 2 on each end when you're working back and forth in a flat panel for this purl stitch here on the front and the back of your work. You can work this in the opposite direction if you're a left-handed loom knitter. I'm going to work from the right to the left with my purl stitches, so if you need that, you can just flip the directions. I'm going to get started. So I've got casted on 14 stitches. And if you'd like to try the Pebble Pop Knit Pillow, you're going to cast on 82 stitches. Make sure your loom can have 82 stitches on there. Okay, so we're going to purl row 1. After you're finished doing that, meet me back up. Make sure that you have casted on from left to right so that you're ending on the very rightmost peg to start row 1. And again, if you are a left-handed loom knitter, you're going to want to do it in the opposite direction. So whichever way is easiest for you in purling, because we're going to have a lot of purl stitches in this stitch pattern. So pause your video as needed, and I'll meet you back in a moment. Okay, I'm working this very last stitch, and I'm showing you that I did purl it. And now I want to go the opposite way, and we're going to go ahead and purl this first stitch. It is worked. It's not a turning peg, meaning you're not ignoring that first stitch. And then we want to work the next ones. Now, this is where we start making a change. We've purled the first stitch. It's always that way. But we're going to do a little bit of a gymnastics over a series of 4 pegs. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you want, you can put a stitch marker on that 4th peg so that you know where that starts. You don't have to use stitch markers. You can mark your peg here. But you want to have it in groups. You're going to be working in groups of 4. So this would be a set of 4, and then the next set will be down here and so on. And I'm going to have to move stitches. So we're going to be increasing and decreasing every row. This stitch here is our 4th one, and we want to move everything over that's on pegs 2 through 4. Now when I say 2 through 4, I mean in this grouping of 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to move it from peg 3 over to peg 4. And then I'm going to move from peg 2 over to peg 3 because I need to move peg 1 over to peg 2. This one's going to stay now. And now I'm going to move this new peg 3 over to peg 4. Okay, so I'm calling, forget this first one, I'm calling these pegs 1, 2, 3, and 4. What's going to happen is this particular peg is going to have an increase. This peg here is going to have the decrease, and we're doing it all within the same row and setting up before we move on. So let's go ahead and move all these stitches over so that you can see them. So I'm going to go down here and count off. This is my peg 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to go down and move my 3 to my 4 peg, move my 2 to the 3, and 1 and to the 2. Now, if you're a tight knitter, you're going to definitely want to do this. If you're really loose, you might be able to move them all at the same time, but it's better to move over this peg one at a time so that you can get this one over from 1 over to 2. We're going to move these over now. And make sure that your row before, on the purl row, that you're nice and loose. Okay, And so you should have an empty peg every other one. Okay, so these are all set up correctly. And it's easier just to go ahead and start it that way so you know. Now we're going to make the increase. This is the purl one, knit one, purl one. Now if you're looking at the pattern on the knit pattern, it's going to say knit one, purl one, knit one. But that's because it's on the wrong side and we have to do the opposite for a loom. So we're going to purl this stitch here, and all we do is place it on the empty one. That one's pretty easy. The next one we're going to knit. Now this is the classic knit or true knit stitch, and we're going to put the yarn on the top of this peg here. I find that it's easier to grab it from putting my loom pick here and putting it on top of the pick, yarning over it, and then pushing it down my peg groove here. Okay, then I'm going to hold it out like this little bunny ear, and I'm going to take my working yarn and bring my knitting tool down here, pull up, or kind of yarn around here, and pull up through that peg groove. So I make the second little bunny ear. Move my working yarn to the back here and pick up my little bunny ears. Okay, and now I'm going to put this peg, take this loop and put it on that peg here, tighten it up, and put this loop on this peg here and tighten it up. Okay, and then now I've successfully increased this from one peg to 2 pegs. Now we're going to knit these together. This is knitting all 3 pegs together by just using a U-wrap. You can grab them all at the same time. I like to do one at a time on this one. And then just going to continue on. We're going to purl, place, knit, bunny ear 1, purl, bunny ear 2, pull them off, place them, and then go ahead and pull that extra slack out. Okay, and then knit these together. You try and get all of them at the same time. I think it's kind of tight, so I'm just going to do one at a time. Okay, and then this is the last one in this sequence. So we're going to purl it, place it, knit, bunny ear, purl. Okay, and if you don't knit it and then purl it, if you try and purl and then purl, it's not going to work. And then I just pull these off, and then you can even put both bunny ears on and put this working yarn at the back and kind of hold it, and it'll cinch up this right one, and then you can pull slack like this. So if you like that method better, try that way. I've actually been doing it this way most of the time. And then knit all these together, and you've got one last stitch that you're going to purl. So just bring that yarn forward, purl the stitch, and then you're done with row 1. I'm sorry, you're done with row 2. So row 3 is simply purling just like row 1 did. So go ahead and purl that stitch again, and we're going to work all the way down to the end in a purl stitch. Pause your video and I'll meet you back in a moment. Okay, I've done the last stitch purling this on row 3. Now row 4 is going to be shifted from the first one. So in order to get these spots to close up where we've expanded, now we're going to knit those areas together, and then we're going to expand out where we had knit everything together. So it's made opposite. So we're going to knit this, we're going to purl this first stitch on row 4. So purl peg 1, and then this is where we're going to move things opposite. So we're going to move 2 to 1, move 3 to 2, 4 to 3, and then move that 2 over to 1. So now you've got every other peg here. You're going to continue doing this setup across. Okay, so I got a little tight on that row before, so just kind of tug on it a little bit, get it on that peg. Move the stitch over, And once you have them all set up, I'll meet you back over and then I'll show you how to do those one more time. So I've set up this entire row 4. Remember that the first 2 are not going to get moved at all. So if you find it easier, you can put stitch markers on just those rows. Just on these pegs, so that you know not to work them. Okay. So now we're going to knit these all together. So every time you see 3 together, it's pretty simple. Just knit them. Okay. And then now we want to create that first stitch, which is the purl, and then place it. Purl in place. Knit. Bunny ear 1. Purl. Bunny ear 2. Take it off. Place those ears on here. Tighten it up. Okay. And then you're just going to continue on. The last thing I want to show you is very important. That way you don't have to hold on to a pattern in your hand. When you return back from a purl row, which is after a row 1 or 3, tilt your loom here and look at the back, and you want to see where you have expanded your stitches and where you have decreased them. So increases and decreases. So you're going to do the opposite as you did the last time. You look back here and see that this one's all bunched up. That's where you had a decrease. You're going to want to move it over and increase it into, so it moves to this stitch and it increases to this stitch and this stitch. This one here had 1, 2, 3 come out of it, so it needs to become like this one. And so it's going to move over here, and it's going to be all decreased together and stacked up as a knit 3 together. Okay, so I hope that helps you. Keep continuing on in your design. Once you get to the end of row 4, just continue knitting rows 1 through 4 until you get the desired length. And if you'd like to join me for knitting up the rest of your pillow, click on the link in the description below to finish that off. I hope you enjoyed knitting the Trinity Stitch. On behalf of GoodKnitKisses, I'm Kristen Mangus, wishing you happy loom knitting.